Oh my gosh, who sent you a microphone?
So he's a DJ, so they sent him a microphone. The other guy was sent the yellow hoodie. And they read the letters out on their video blogs. Now, I mean, this is a completely new form of communication. Young people talking to each other through video on YouTube. And they started talking about the issues, and in response, there were literally hundreds of videos posted up of people going, absolutely right, why is it the older generation write us off without even thinking about it? This is kind of one of the more interesting video responses.
So, basically, guys, the older generation are terrified of us. And to be fair, shouldn't they? I mean, everyone knows that we're the knife-wielding, hoodie-wearing generation that's obsessed with violent video games, and that isn't going to amount to anything, right? But let's take a closer look at the generation that are calling us feral, cruel, and ruthless. Hi, old people. Isn't it your generation that refused to plan more than 3 months ahead in business and got us into the current financial turmoil that the world's in at the moment? Isn't it your generation that started an unjust war and is sending members of my generation to fight it for you?
Really, really interesting stuff. Now, at the moment, nobody knows who's behind this. There's just a big debate going on. Then, the RNLI released a video of their own saying, actually, we were behind this.
Youth, teenager, 17-year-old in a hoodie. What comes into your mind?
Hard-working,
a real desire to help people.
very inspirational.
Someone who's no different from what I used to be.
Young people are never described in this way. I don't know why. You see, in our experience, it's the truth.
Love the way you're waiting. I love your kindness.
So they posted a video and they explained that actually what the RNLI does is it sends young people out in very, very small boats to rescue lives in kind of conditions that would terrify most of us. And that actually without young people and the impulsion that young people have to help and to be a public service, then they wouldn't exist as an organisation, which is an incredibly motivating kind of thought. And then what happened is they invited the video bloggers to go down to their centre in Poole in Dorset to see what it's like to train as lifeboatmen. They went out with the lifeboats. Every single one of them blogged and vlogged about it in a really positive way. By the time they finished, there were probably around 1,400 videos had been uploaded to YouTube, a total number of video views about the whole of this debate in the region of 1.5 million. It led to around 500 people volunteering to become RNLI lifeboatmen. You don't get paid for this, by the way. And it drove a whole community of young people to understand what the organisation did. Now, the really interesting thing about this is here is an organisation who set out to build a whole load of relationships. They did not set out to do anything transactional. Most charities set out to say, give us your money and in return you'll feel good about it. The RNLI set out to actually change the way people felt about themselves. Now that to me seems to be incredibly powerful. But actually, you know, there was an extraordinary person behind this, or an extraordinary group of people, because what they were looking for was not a return on investment. What they were really looking for was a return on idea. And here's the really scary thing about an awful lot of direct marketing. In order to do anything really compelling and interesting, you have to do it for the first time. And the trouble with doing something for the first time is you have no idea if it's going to work or not. So, I think there are new rules of communication. And the new rules of communication make the job of the marketer more difficult than they've ever been before. So, having a quick look, what are the old rules? Well, the old rules of marketing were if you were a client, you spent most of your money on media, and as a result of the digital revolution, we've seen a change in that. Films.com, an absolutely brilliant direct marketing campaign that grew BMW's share of the American auto market by 12%. What it was a series of films shot by Hollywood A-list directors. This one was shot by Ang Lee, featuring Clive Owen, and each of them is about 4 to 5 minutes in length. Now, what was genius about this is a complete paradigm shift. Here was BMW not spending 90% of its budget on media, but spending 90% of its budget on content. And then because the content was so good, people went to it. When you went to their website, you had to download BMW Player. So suddenly there's now a cookie sitting on your computer that allows BMW to track every move you make on your computer. At the same time, you're invited to fill in a form. Are you interested in BMWs? Do you want to know more about them? And suddenly they're putting you in touch with your local dealer. You know, this led to 120,000 warm prospects, you know, of which 60,000 were converted. 60,000 cars. So, a really interesting paradigm shift. The second, clients aren't media owners. Well, increasingly they are becoming media owners. And here's a little example of somebody who understands this brilliantly.
Will it blend? That is the question. I love my new iPad. It does a ton of cool things. But will it blend? That is the question. Doesn't quite fit in the jar, but I can take care of that.
Now this is Tom Dixon. He is the CEO of his own company, Blendit Tech. And he has a YouTube TV channel called Blendit. His website is essentially a TV channel on which there are all these demonstrations of will it blend. He just blends everything. But he's really open to suggestions. So, for example, you know, he blended an iPhone because people wanted him to do that. People send in suggestions, he listens to them, and then he puts the video up on his website and so forth. Now, the really interesting thing, and here's the real shift in the way advertising works. The largest single manufacturer of blenders in the UK, in Europe, is Bosch. Now, if you Google Bosch blenders, you get 300,000 links. If you Google blenders, there are 10 million. So here is a really small manufacturer of blenders in America who's turned himself into an icon. He's been interviewed on the Letterman show, and what he's also done is drive his business dramatically because he understands that actually if he owns his own media, then people will come to him. I mean, advertising interrupts content. Well, actually, increasingly now, advertising is content.
I work 10 to 12 hours in my profession, and you have to spend time with your family and kids after that, and the first thing that goes is exercise.
I love this story. It's about a score that hasn't been settled in 15 years on the football field.
Roughly 87 feet between the State Lions of Phillipsburg and the Red Rovers of Easton.
Like 27-yard field goal attempt. It's blocked. The whistle has blown. This one is over. A sister kisser.
Time might be worse than the loss. We think we have a score to settle.
Gatorade has chosen to team up with the towns of Phillipsburg, New Jersey, and Easton. We're inviting the guys from the 93 team to strap on the helmet and shoulder pads and replay that game to determine the true champion once and for all.
Finally tonight, old high school football rivals.
With the same guys who played 16 years ago?
This is one of the best moments. It will be the best moment in my life, other than when my daughter was born.
We played Gatorade to do it to prove that once you're an athlete, you're always an athlete.
The original head coaches were invited back.
The original cheerleaders and the original band members are going to be here.
The returning players underwent a rigorous...
So this is an absolutely fantastic idea. There's a really simple planner's insight here, which is Gatorade is drunk by young 20-year-old sports people. They get to be in their 30s, you know, and they move on. So how are you going to grow the market by getting people to come with you? Well, let's get those high school games replayed. Now, in so many ways, this is genius. Not just, you know, the core idea, but actually, at the moment, their third Gatorade replay is happening. A couple of high school basketball teams are taking each other on. And so it's an incredibly local as well as global affair. Local high schools are now setting up their own replay matches. And of course, they're all sort of branded Gatorade. Now, the thing about the content part of this is that you can go online, you can see the cheerleaders as they come back together and try and remember the old routines. You know, it's heartwarming stuff. But then all of that gets packaged and it gets put out in DVD forms. ABC Television has created a 1-hour documentary, you know, which is now also branded Gatorade. So advertising is becoming content and TV stations will pay for it. So for me, for agencies, it's kind of a really interesting new paradigm shift because, you know, we're in the business of creating ideas from which we can start making money through IP. You build brands through advertising. Oh, really? Well, the Arctic Monkeys, Lily Allen, have told us otherwise. And this is a band from Manchester called the Get Out Clause. Now, the really interesting thing about the Get Out Clause, like a lot of young bands, they've got no money. They're absolutely skint. But of course, in the UK, we have more CCTV cameras than any other country in the world. So they went and performed in front of as many CCTV cameras as they could find in Manchester, and then asked people if they could have the film. And then they edited it together. Now, of course, this is a really clever idea, and so it's got enormous traction on the web. On their Facebook music page, they've got around 200,000 followers now. People are downloading their tracks, and so they're using communication in a new and really interesting way to build themselves as a brand. And I'm going to talk in a minute about actually how the music business seems to know more about marketing and direct marketing than marketers do. But for me, the paradigm shift is that actually it's people who build brands. You know, it's not brand builders per se. And the real move I want to talk about in a moment is actually how marketing is moving from actually B2C, business to consumer, from consumer to consumer. And this is an idea using Facebook. In Warsaw, the Museum of Modern Life was genuinely worried that young Poles were forgetting about their not too distant history. That 60 years ago there was the Warsaw Ghetto. And in the Warsaw Ghetto, basically what happened is that between November the 21st and through to the middle of January, Nazi troops attempted to, and were successful in the end, exterminate all the Jewish people, citizens of the city. And they felt that a lot of people had forgotten about this. So in order to remind them, they created 2 Facebook profiles for Sonia and Thomas. And what they did is in real time, from the middle of November through to January, they lived their experiences as they would have lived them 60 years ago in Warsaw. And so again, we've got Thomas using his mobile camera, because he's crossover, to upload to his Facebook page videos of German stormtroopers and to report what's happening. So this is using Facebook in real time to bring history alive. And then, of course, the most shocking thing of all is they both die at the end of it. And by the time they died, of course, people had been talking to people about it, and they had 350,000 followers each. These are people who've gone all the way through to register as fans. So something really powerful is happening now, when people will talk to people about stuff that really interests them. So the man is in control. You know, that's the trouble with marketers. And we still like to control, you know, budget and where we're going to place that budget. We like to control the nature of the message, and we like to control the relationship, but we can't any longer. This is A.G. Lafley, who runs Procter & Gamble, talking to his own marketers.
It's an incredibly exciting time to be creating and building brands. I think we have a greater opportunity to move beyond transactions to relationships than ever